What if I told you that a secret code could change the course of World War II? How did a group of Navajo men created an unbreakable code using their native language? Why was the Navajo language the perfect choice for this mission? What challenges did these brave men face in their journey? How did their contributions impact the outcome of the war? And why were their incredible achievements kept secret for decades? Join us as we uncover the fascinating story of the Navajo Code Talkers, the unsung heroes who helped secure victory in the Pacific Theater. During World War II, a group of Navajo men, known as the Navajo Code Talkers, worked with the U.S. Marine Corps, using their own language to send covert signals that the Japanese were never able to understand. The Navajo language lacks a written form and is extremely complex. Because of this, it was the perfect language for writing impenetrable code. Compared to the code-breaking computers of the day, the Code Talkers could send messages at a rate of 3 lines per minute. Utilized in every significant Marine action in the Pacific Theater, the Navajo Code Talkers contributed significantly to the Allied triumph in World War II and helped save countless lives. A remarkable group of heroes developed during the chaos of World War II, when communication was essential to winning, the Navajo Code Talkers. These were no ordinary army. These were Navajo men from the southwest of the country, and they carried a weapon far more potent than a gun, their own tongue. For those unfamiliar with the language, the Navajo tones and unwritten form constituted an almost impossible barrier. Its particular characteristic gave it the ideal basis for an unbreakable code. The U.S. was driven in 1942 by the dire need for secure communication in the Pacific Theater. The Marines came up with a groundbreaking solution: use Navajo as a code. The Marines recruited a group of 29 young Navajo guys who were proficient in both Navajo and English. These soldiers received intense training. Many of them had never left the reservation before. They committed a code to memory that connected military terminology, gear, locations, and even troop movements to the Navajo language. This seemingly absurd technique was astonishingly effective. Tanks became iron turtles, aeroplanes flying eagles, and battleships big whales. One can only imagine the frustration a Japanese codebreaker would feel upon receiving a message like Bosco Beshlo, indicating the approach of 3 tanks from the east. It was meaningless nonsense to someone who didn't know Navajo. The Code Talkers were able to communicate significantly faster than code-breaking computers of the period, both in terms of transmission speed and translation rate. Every significant Marine action in the Pacific involved the significant contribution of the Navajo Code Talkers. 6 Navajo Code Talkers successfully relayed nearly 800 communications during the critical Battle of Iwo Jima, one of the war's turning points, without making a single mistake. Their prompt communication helped the Marines conquer the island by providing critical intelligence on enemy positions and coordinating critical maneuvers. The contributions of the Navajo Code Talkers were kept a closely guarded secret for decades, despite their vital service. They carried the weight of a covert weapon while operating behind the scenes and risking their lives with their fellow Marines. The Navajo Code was unbroken even after the war ended in 1945. Not until the 1960s did the general public become aware of these remarkable guys. The Navajo Code Talkers were finally awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian decoration granted by the United States in recognition of their valor. Congress, year 2000. It's evidence of the resourcefulness and bravery of a disenfranchised group that used its distinctive language as a tool for social change. Their history serves as a reminder that even the seemingly ordinary can possess amazing power, and that heroes can emerge from the most unlikely places. Secure communication was necessary during World War II, And the US Marines discovered an ingenious solution in the most unlikely place, the language of the Navajo people. Imagine the enemy intercepts a message like "Besh-lo-tso," meaning 2 rifles approaching. It sounds confusing, doesn't it? The Navajo Code Talkers were able to use that kind of power. For outsiders, the Navajo language was a mystery because of its intricate tones and unwritten form. In 1942, the Marines recruited Navajo men who were proficient in both Navajo and English. These men learned to speak in code and grew proficient in it, turning Navajo words into military jargon. They referred to battleships as big whales, tanks as iron turtles, and aircraft as flying eagles. This seemingly silly code turned out to be quite clever. The remarkable speed at which the Navajo Code Talkers conveyed signals significantly outpaced that of the enemy's code breakers. A Japanese soldier trying to figure out Bosco Besh-lo, 3 tanks from the east, must be quite frustrated. It was just useless nonsense. Significant Marine successes were made possible by the Navajo Code Talkers. They sent almost 800 communications without a hitch at Iwo Jima, guaranteeing that the Marines had the information they needed to plan their maneuvers. Despite keeping their position a secret for many years, their influence was evident. The impenetrable Navajo Code, essential to the Allied victory, demonstrates the strength of a singular language. Imagine the following scenario. At the height of World War II, the adversary could decipher conventional codes, posing a risk of sending a vital message. Here come the Navajo Code Talkers, a group of men from the Navajo tribe who used their native language as a weapon far more potent than a pistol. However, why was the Navajo language thought to be unbreakable, and what made it such a successful code? The Navajo language's fundamental fabric holds the key to understanding. Navajo is an Athabascan language, different from the languages of Europe, unlike most other languages. It has an intricate system of verb conjugations and tones that can drastically change a word's meaning. Think of the word water. It is a straightforward, one-syllable word in English. However, due to the innate intricacy of Navajo, a simple tone shift might alter the meaning of water to metal or even field. This makes it extremely difficult for someone who is not familiar with the language to understand. One more feature that made Navajo a code-worthy language was that it was essentially an oral language. Despite attempts to chronicle the language in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, their reach and extent remained constrained. Because there was no established written form, potential code breakers could not easily access dictionaries or grammar guides. Oral transmission of the language through generations posed a serious challenge to those who were not Navajo. Because of these qualities, Navajo was an ideal choice for a code. 1942 saw the US Marines discover this possibility, since they were in dire need of a secure communication system in the Pacific theater. Many of the young Navajo men they recruited had never ventured outside of the reservation. These individuals were perfect for the role of code talkers because they spoke Navajo and English well. Next, the Marines created a sophisticated coding system. There was Navajo terminology for military terms, gear, locations, and even troop movements. This seemingly funny system turned tanks into iron turtles, planes into flying eagles, and battleships into big whales. It worked astonishingly well. A Japanese soldier deciphered a telegram that said, "Tso Bishlo," which translates to 2 men approaching. If one did not know Navajo, it would be meaningless nonsense. The code talkers themselves were able to translate and broadcast messages at a rate that was significantly faster than the code-breaking computers available at the time. The Navajo language's intricacy and absence of a written form gave the Marines an impenetrable barrier. The fact that the Navajo code was kept a closely guarded secret for decades is evidence of the potency of this unusual weapon. The story of the Navajo Code Talkers provides an intriguing illustration of how seemingly commonplace objects can transform into remarkable weapons during a battle. Not only did the Navajo Code Talkers utilize an unbreakable code, but they also transmitted messages at a breakneck pace. Consider the aggravation of the adversary attempting to interpret a real-time military message such as baffled, which translates to "two rifles approaching." The Code Talkers had the advantage for this reason. During World War II, conventional code-cracking devices were sluggish and unwieldy. They needed to decipher enemy codes using intricate algorithms, which may take hours for a brief communication. In contrast, the Navajo Code Talkers communicated in real time. Their covert tool, knownness. They had committed Navajo words to memory, which served as military jargon. This seemingly straightforward approach avoided the need for intricate encryption and decoding, with tanks rumbling as iron turtles, battleships sailing as big whales, and aeroplanes soaring as flying eagles. At breakneck speed, the Code Talkers could send messages in Navajo and have the recipient translate them back into English. This 3-line-per-minute efficiency was significantly faster than the antiquated, cumbersome code-cracking devices. Imagine a combat zone where every moment matters. By immediately informing commanders of critical intelligence like enemy positions or troop movements, the Navajo Code Talkers gave the Marines a critical advantage. A key element in the Navajo Code's success was its speed. The Marines gained the tactical advantage on the battlefield by receiving and acting upon the communications in real time, while the opposition struggled to comprehend them. In addition to speaking a coded language, the Navajo Code Talkers were instrumental in the Allied successes throughout the Pacific. Just picture the mayhem in a conflict without safe communication. But the Navajo Code Talkers were a hidden weapon that the Marines had. All significant Marine operations throughout the Pacific used these highly qualified personnel who spoke Navajo and English well. They assigned Navajo words to military terminology, places, and troop movements, using their own language as a code. Say, Bosco Besh Lo, 3 tanks from the east, as an example of a message. To an outsider, it made no sense at all. It was important intelligence for the Marines. The Navajo Code's security and speed turned out to be quite useful. The Code Talkers ensured real-time communication on the battlefield by transmitting messages at a rate of 3 lines per minute, in contrast to heavy code-breaking machinery. Commanders received crucial information immediately due to this speed. The rapid dissemination of information about troop movements and enemy positions enabled the Marines to respond with strategic agility. There is no denying the Navajo Code Talkers' influence. They sent through more than 800 signals flawlessly during the crucial Battle of Iwo Jima. Their assistance made sure the Marines had the knowledge required to maneuver skillfully and eventually win. Although their involvement in the war effort was kept a secret for many years, it had a significant influence since the Navajo Code was unbreakable and the Code Talkers who used it were courageous. This led to the saving of many lives. It was 1942. As the Second World War rages over the world, the Pacific Theater is crucial to the Allies' strategy. One major issue facing the US Marines is maintaining secure communication while on the front lines. Conventional codes may put entire operations at risk of adversary decryption. Little did anyone know that the Navajo Nation, an unexpected source, would have the solution to this puzzle instead of sophisticated machinery. Philip Johnston, the son of a missionary and raised on a Navajo reservation, is the protagonist of the tale. Johnston, who was fluent in Navajo and had a strong cultural background, was aware of the distinctive features of the language. Unlike most languages spoken in Europe, Navajo is an Athabascan language with intricate verb tenses and tones. A single word might mean several things, depending on how it is spoken. Furthermore, Navajo was essentially an oral language that was passed down verbally through the generations. Because it lacked a regular written form, outsiders could not easily acquire it through readily available resources. Johnston came up with a daring idea: use Navajo as a code for military correspondence. For someone who was not familiar with the language, its intricate structure and unwritten nature rendered it nearly impossible to understand. When Johnston first presented his plan to the Marine Corps in early 1942, there was some skepticism. But the Marines agreed to test the idea since encrypted communication was becoming more and more important. On Navajo Nation reservations, recruitment got underway. Even though many young Navajo men had never left their ancestral homeland, they were ready to give back to their nation. The Marines were looking for those who could think swiftly under duress, had excellent recall, and spoke Navajo and English well. The first Navajo Code Talkers, a group of 29 young men, were chosen and sent to boot camp at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego. The training schedule was rigorous. These young men, who are now Marines, had to learn a complicated coding system in addition to the nuances of military operations. There was Navajo terminology for military terms, gear, locations, and even troop movements. For instance, they called battleships big whales, tanks iron turtles, and aircraft flying eagles. The code talkers trained in fast transmission and translation, striving to reach 3 lines per minute, and committed these associations to memory. This speed was essential because, on the battlefield, prompt communication may spell the difference between victory and defeat. For the Marines, enlisting the Navajo Code Talkers in 1942 was a game-changer in the war. It was about utilizing the special abilities of an underappreciated community, not just cracking a new code. Taken from their reservations, these young men were about to set out on a voyage that would alter the course of history, using their native tongue as a potent tool in the struggle for liberation. As the tide of World War II began to change in 1942, the Marines had to deal with a serious communication issue. The enemy could easily crack conventional codes, threatening the security of entire operations. The Navajo Nation provided an unexpected response. Desperate for a safe way out, the Marines discovered one in the distinctive features of the Navajo language. The verb patterns and tones of Navajo were entirely distinct from those of European languages, making it a more complex language than most others. A single word might mean several things, depending on how it is spoken. Navajo, above all, was essentially an oral language without written records. For those outside of the Navajo tribe, this absence of a proper written form became a significant obstacle. The Marines hired young Navajo males who were proficient in both Navajo and English after realizing this potential. These men were known as the Navajo Code Talkers. They received rigorous training. They were becoming proficient in a sophisticated coding system in addition to military strategies. They allocated corresponding Navajo words to military terms. Battleships sailed like big whales, tanks roared like iron turtles, and aeroplanes flew like flying eagles. Envision a combat zone. A Navajo would send a communication like "Besh-lo-tso," meaning 2 rifles approaching. The opponent saw it as meaningless. However, the Marines needed that information desperately. The code talkers trained at a speed of 3 lines per minute for both transmission and translation. This speed was essential since it made sure commanders had rapid access to vital information for making strategic judgments. With their native tongue serving as a potent weapon in the struggle for survival, the Navajo Code Talkers were more than just soldiers. They were code warriors. Global in scope, World War II necessitated innovation on all fronts. Behind the scenes, an extraordinary group of heroes, the Navajo Code Talkers, rose to prominence while the battles were waged on land and at sea. Instead of using firearms and bombs in battle, these young Navajo guys used their native tongue, a far more potent weapon. Their efforts were crucial to the Allies' triumph in the Pacific theater. The Navajo language was inherently complex, which contributed to the code's efficacy. Navajo is a member of the Athabascan language family, which is distinct from European languages in that it has complex verb conjugations and tones that drastically change meaning. Consider the English word water, which is a simple noun. However, in Navajo, a slight shift in tone can turn it into metal or even field. Because of this intricacy, Navajo was nearly impossible for outsiders to understand. The fact that Navajo was mostly an oral language added yet another degree of protection. Despite attempts to chronicle it in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, their reach and extent remained constrained. Because there was no uniform written form, potential enemy codebreakers could not easily access dictionaries or grammatical guides. The language was an impenetrable barrier for outsiders, passed down through generations as a closely guarded secret. In 1942, the Marines realized the potential of the Navajo language since they were in dire need of a safe means of communication in the Pacific. Many of the young Navajo men they recruited had never ventured outside of the reservation. These individuals had extraordinary memories and the capacity to think fast under duress, in addition to speaking Navajo and English with ease. The recently designated code talkers have extensive training. They had to become proficient in military maneuvers and commit to memory an intricate code system that paired military terminology with their equivalent Navajo words. This seemingly absurd approach proved amazingly efficient, with tanks being referred to as iron turtles, battleships as big whales, and aeroplanes as flying eagles. Say, for example, that a Japanese soldier overhears a Navajo message that says "Tso bish lo," meaning 2 men approaching. That would be useless nonsense. The code talkers themselves were able to translate and broadcast messages at a rate that was significantly faster than the code-breaking computers available at the time. This pace was essential. With their ability to send 3 lines of code per minute, they could guarantee that commanders received critical information instantly. Beyond cryptography, the Navajo Code Talkers had a significant impact. They were vital to all major marine operations in the Pacific, relaying artillery fire, enemy positions, and troop movements. For example, 6 Navajo Code Talkers successfully relayed over 800 signals during the crucial Battle of Iwo Jima. Their assistants made sure the Marines had the knowledge required to maneuver skillfully and eventually win. Long after the war, the Navajo Code was kept a closely guarded secret. These young men's bravery and inventiveness in using their mother tongue as a weapon were crucial to the success of the Allies. Their story pays tribute to the power of ingenuity and the unsuspecting heroes who bravely step up during times of conflict. During World War II, in a time when communication was vital for survival, the Navajo Code Talkers became an exceptional force. Their unbreakable code, a noteworthy feature of their service often overlooked, allowed them to avoid capture or death while serving. This amazing achievement warrants more investigation. The fact that their role is secret is one important component. The Code Talkers worked in the background, unlike soldiers, who could be easily recognized on the battlefield. They avoided direct fire by positioning themselves in front of the adversary. They were mostly found at communication centers, apart from the most intense fighting. This strategic positioning minimized the risk of capture or injury. The Code Talkers themselves had received extensive training in combat awareness as well. Many came from the Navajo Nation, accustomed to traversing vast, challenging landscapes. They knew how important it was to continue being aware and moving. It's possible that their understanding of topography and camouflage helped them remain hidden from the enemy during crucial moments. Another important factor was the Navajo language's intricacy. The communications the code talkers transmitted would be unintelligible to hostile soldiers, even if they were captured. Therefore, they held less value as potential intelligence sources, making them less vulnerable to attack. The Marines also took aggressive steps to guarantee that the code remained confidential. They frequently allocated different code talkers, each sending a distinct portion to a single message. This meant that the entire code would remain secret even if one coder was apprehended. This redundancy further guaranteed that the adversary would not access the code itself, even in the event of apprehending a code talker. Finally, there's little doubt that a little bit of luck helped. Despite their best attempts, there are always risks in a war since it is unexpected. However, a combination of training, strategic placement, and the intricacy of the code likely contributed to the Navajo Code Talkers' incredible record. They played the part of a covert weapon that contributed to victory and came out of the conflict unhurt. During World War II, when deciphering enemy codes could potentially alter the outcome of a conflict, the United States Marines discovered the seemingly harmless Navajo language as a weapon. This was no ordinary code, full of mysterious symbols and substitutions. The Japanese found the Navajo code impenetrable, building a shield from the very fabric of an intricate, unwritten language. The Navajo code was brilliant because of its innate intricacy. Navajo is a member of the Athabascan language family, in contrast to most European languages. Its structure is largely dependent on verb conjugations and tones, which can significantly change a word's meaning. Think of the word water. It's an easy one to pronounce in English. However, in Navajo, a slight alteration in intonation may turn it into metal or even field. This complex structure rendered understanding the language nearly impossible for anyone who was not acquainted with its nuances. The absence of a standardized written form added yet another degree of protection. Despite attempts to document Navajo in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, their reach and extent remained constrained. This ensured that any possible enemy codebreakers would not have easy access to dictionaries or grammar guidelines. The language was a living custom that had been passed down through the ages, making it extremely difficult for outsiders to decipher. In 1942, the Marines saw its potential since they were in dire need of a secure communication system in the Pacific Theater. They enlisted a group of young Navajo males who spoke Navajo and English well. The Navajo Code Talkers were men who underwent extensive training. They committed a code system to memory in which Navajo phrases had equivalent military meanings. This seemingly absurd approach proved amazingly efficient, with tanks being referred to as iron turtles, battleships as big whales, and aeroplanes as flying eagles. Say, for example, that a Japanese soldier overheard a Navajo communication that said "Beshlotso," which translates to "two rifles approaching." It would all be meaningless nonsense to him. The code talkers themselves were able to translate and broadcast messages at a rate that was significantly faster than the code-breaking computers available at the time. This pace was essential. With their ability to send 3 lines of code per minute, they could guarantee that commanders received critical information instantly. The Navajo language's intricacy and absence of a written form gave the Marines an impenetrable barrier. The code remained secret for many years after the war. Though they tried, the Japanese were never able to decipher the code. This demonstrates both the remarkable abilities of the Navajo Code Talkers and the creativity of the code itself. Their tale demonstrates the potency of taking seemingly commonplace components like language and transforming them into remarkable weapons to ensure victory in times of conflict. Long cloaked in secrecy, the Navajo Code Talkers were instrumental in the Allied victory during World War II. Armed with their mother tongue, these young men acted as an impenetrable barrier that facilitated communication on the battlefield, and ultimately saved a great many lives. However, their contribution went mostly unnoticed for years. Eventually, the United States awarded them the highest civilian honor in 2000. Congress, the Gold Medal for Congress. There is a complicated backstory to the Navajo Code Talkers' delayed acknowledgement. Communication tactics during World War II mainly relied on secrecy. Due to its unique qualities, the Navajo Code remained a secret weapon until the end of the conflict. This effectively concealed the importance of these soldiers to victory from the general public. A movement to honor the Code Talkers' service emerged in the late 20th century as public awareness of their contributions increased. Navajo communities and veterans organizations pushed Congress to acknowledge their contributions. Congress finally passed the Navajo Code Talkers Recognition Act in 2000. This act authorized the minting of a congressional gold medal to be given to each surviving Navajo Code Talker, in addition to officially acknowledging their service. The highest civilian honor granted by the United States is the Congressional Gold Medal, Congress. It serves as a representation of the gratitude of the country for notable accomplishments and contributions made by people or organizations. It was critical to give the Navajo Code Talkers this coveted medal. The 2001 celebration was a moment of validation and long overdue appreciation for the Code Talkers themselves. Many have endured the burden of their secret service for decades. Surrounded by their families and fellow veterans, they accepted the Congressional Gold Medal as a symbol of the country's appreciation for their sacrifice and resourcefulness. The Congressional Gold Medal ceremony celebrated the special strength of the Navajo language in addition to paying tribute to the past. The tale of the Code Talkers is proof of the inventiveness and tenacity of a disenfranchised group of people. It emphasizes how, in times of conflict, seemingly commonplace aspects like language may be turned into extremely useful weapons. A poignant reminder is provided by the Congressional Gold Medal, which honors the Navajo Code Talkers. It serves as a reminder to value the accomplishments of heroes who are sometimes disregarded and to honor the strength of different communities. This is a tale that is not only about World War II, but also about the continuous fight for equal rights and the resilience of cultural heritage. Information and communication were just as important in the Second World War as guns and bombs. In this battle, the The Navajo language was a weapon that the Marines used differently than any other. Young men who bravely, patriotically and selflessly served their country, the Navajo Code Talkers, became an essential part of American history. Their narrative goes beyond the battlefield to serve as a reminder of the strength of language, resiliency, and the unsuspecting heroes who step up to save the day. The Navajo Code Talkers' courage comes from accepting a special duty in addition to facing the perils of combat. In 1942, recruiters assigned these men, many of whom had never left their reservations, the responsibility of safeguarding a crucial secret: the Navajo Code. Their unwritten language and nuanced tones created an impenetrable barrier for the enemy. This apparently absurd method was astonishingly effective, with tanks being referred to as iron turtles, battleships as big whales, and aeroplanes as flying eagles. Being proficient in both Navajo and English, the Code Talkers could communicate at a rate that was significantly faster than code-breaking devices, guaranteeing that commanders received vital information promptly. Their willingness to serve their country in the face of social and cultural obstacles is a true testament to their patriotism. They took on a new role, leaving behind their comfortable neighborhoods and risking their lives for a country that had not previously acknowledged their ancestry. Their commitment to the war effort is a wonderful example of the spirit of patriotism that is independent of origin or nationality. The Navajo Code Talkers made more than just military sacrifices. They worked in secrecy, and the public was unaware of their contributions for many years. Even from their families, they concealed their role and bore the burden of their covert service. Although their sacrifice guaranteed the code's efficacy, it also meant that their valor went unrecognized for years. The Navajo Code Talkers' achievements during the war are only a small part of their legacy. Their narrative demonstrates the significance of language and cultural heritage. An apparently insignificant component, the Navajo language, became a weapon that contributed to the triumph. This serves as a reminder of the benefits of cultural diversity and the significance of maintaining distinctive customs. The message their narrative conveys makes the Navajo Code Talkers a significant part of American history, in addition to their involvement in World War II. It stands as a testament to bravery in the face of uncertainty, unwavering patriotism, and the unsuspecting heroes who rise to the challenge. Their history serves as a reminder to value diversity, recognize the accomplishments of underrepresented groups, and recognize the potential of seemingly insignificant objects when applied creatively and selflessly. The Navajo Code Talkers were not like other heroes of World War II. Imagine young men using their native tongue as a covert weapon while they are away from their homes in the Navajo Nation. Because of its distinct tones and absence of written form, the Navajo language was too complicated for the Japanese to understand. Code Talkers were these unsung heroes. They could convey signals at an astonishing rate, ensuring crucial information reached commanders instantly. Tanks rumbled as iron turtles, battleships sailed as big whales, and aeroplanes soared as flying eagles. Military terms were associated with Navajo phrases. Code Talkers were unsung heroes who worked behind the scenes to support every major Marine action in the Pacific. They sent hundreds of communications flawlessly at the critical Battle of Iwo Jima, which proved crucial to the Marines' triumph. They kept their function a secret for many years, but their influence was evident. The Navajo Code Talkers changed the course of World War II with their bravery, sense of patriotism, and ability to communicate in their own language. The story of the Navajo Code Talkers weaves themes of bravery, loyalty, and selflessness into its narrative. Their bravery extended beyond simply dodging gunfire. Imagine young men who are leaving their families on the reserve for the first time, and they are entrusted with a language that is a critical secret. With its many tones and absence of written form, Navajo's intricacy developed into an impenetrable code. Battleships became big whales, tanks became iron turtles, and messages that were incomprehensible to the enemy but obvious to Marines were sent. Not only was this code witty, it was essential. Code Talkers were able to communicate at a very high speed, which allowed commanders to receive vital information about troop movements and enemy positions immediately. Their quickness might be the difference between success and failure. Their cultural obstacles did not stop their patriotism. These young men risked their lives for the greater good, serving a country that had not always accepted their ancestry. For many years, their role remained secret, preparing them to forego notoriety and even safety. The Navajo Code Talkers are a living example of the unsung heroes that step up to save the day. Their tale serves as a reminder of the power inherent in seemingly commonplace objects, such as language, when applied bravely and creatively. They serve as a reminder that sacrifice can take many different forms, and that patriotism can flourish anywhere. As the Second World War raged across continents, ingenuity was required on all fronts. Behind the scenes, an extraordinary group of heroes, the Navajo Code Talkers, rose to prominence as combat took place on land and at sea. They had a major influence on how the war turned out, especially in the Pacific theater, possibly saving countless lives and cutting the length of the fighting. The innate intricacy of the Navajo language contributed to the code's efficacy. Unlike most other European languages, Navajo, related to the Athabascan language family, features complex verb conjugations and tones that significantly alter meaning. Think of the word water. It's an easy one to pronounce in English, but in Navajo, a slight shift in tone may turn it into metal or even field. These troops were no different from any other frontline soldier in terms of danger. Bombs and bullets did not differentiate on the basis of linguistic ability. The message transmission process frequently left them in exposed places, making them easy targets. Their passing served as a sobering reminder of the costs incurred in order to win. The legacy of the Navajo Code Talkers is a testament to the power of resilience, ingenuity, and the extraordinary strength found in the most unexpected places. Their courage and innovation not only changed the course of history, but continued to inspire generations. If you found this story as captivating as we did, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories to light. Thank you for watching. The legacy of the Navajo Code Talkers is a testament to the power of resilience, ingenuity, and extraordinary strength found in the most unexpected places. Their courage and innovation not only changed the course of history, but continued to inspire generations.